Hey, hello and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's great to have you with us at this college golf recruiting and Toyota Tour Cup webinar. My name is Joe Accordino. Before we introduce the speakers and start tonight's session, I just want to talk about obviously the thing that's on everybody's mind, which is what you all are dealing with in the LA, Southern California area with the fires over the last week or so. I'm up in Southern California, but my brother lives in Los Angeles. I've seen what's been happening, and I know the impact that it's having on that area. And from us at Athlos College Coaching, and certainly from the SCPGA Junior Tour as well, we just want to say that we're so sorry about what you all are dealing with. I know it's probably very difficult, but you're in our thoughts as you navigate this situation. If you have to jump off the Zoom for any reason whatsoever, that's fine. This session will be recorded. It'll be on our website, athloscollegecoaching.com tonight or tomorrow. So if you need to jump, feel free to do that. In addition to this being recorded, we do want you all to ask questions. It looks like some people are actually making notes on this slide somehow already, but we want you to participate. We want you to be active in this session. Please utilize the chat function. As you might have noticed, you entered this meeting muted because we are going to have probably north of 100 people during this session. It's just too chaotic if people are unmuting to ask questions. So please feel free to utilize the Zoom chat function to write your questions about college golf recruiting or the Toyota Tour Cup. So again, my name is Joe Accordino. It's a pleasure to have you with us this evening. Just a quick introduction on myself and the rest of the team here. I co-founded Athlos College Coaching about 4 years ago. What we do is lead students through the college golf recruiting process, and I'll share more information on that momentarily. We're joined by Amberlynn Dorsey, who is an Athlos coach. You also might recognize her. She was with the SCPGA Junior Tour for a long time, most recently as the Assistant Junior Golf Director. So thrilled to have her as part of the Athlos team. My good friend Caden, who worked with us at Athlos College Coaching on his recruitment. He committed to the University of Pennsylvania. We're thrilled for him. And then he followed that up by winning the 2024 Southern California Junior AM. And then William from the SCPGA Junior Tour. William, we're so appreciative that you could join us this evening. You know, what we get a lot of questions about and what SCPGA Junior Tour gets a lot of questions about is college golf recruiting, because a lot of you want to play college golf, and the Toyota Tour Cup. How do we get to that level of play? And William's going to address that. So William, thank you so much for being with us this evening. So let's just get into a brief introduction about who we are at Athlos College Coaching. We are based in California. We work with students exclusively in California right now. Northern California, as I said, I live in San Francisco, and of course, with plenty of you down in Southern California. We are fortunate enough to be an SCPGA Junior Tour partner. We're thrilled about that. What we do is we lead students through every step of the college golf recruiting process. So what does that mean? That means first we help you build a list of 50 schools that you should be reaching out to, right? You need to start by reaching out to the right institutions and then helping you write emails to coaches, helping you understand how to conduct phone calls with college coaches, how to comport yourself on visits, how to manage offers, how to commit somewhere, right, Caden? I mean, this is the whole process that we go through, and it's fun, right? We have some logos here of where our students are committed and attending, but it's not just D1. College golf has played the D2, D3, NAIA, JUCO levels, and you know, if you're serious about this, we believe that there's probably a spot out there for you. So that's our role at Athlos, is leading students through the college golf recruiting process. So Amberlynn, why don't you share a little bit more about tips that you can do to help yourself in the recruiting process?
Joe, and I know we have such a wide and broad audience here with us. I think there are some individuals who aren't even in middle school yet. But, starting with middle school, if you're in middle school or have a player in middle school, play regularly, build confidence, build familiarity with the game, get used to competing, get used to winning, get used to losing, just get used to competition. That's very, very important. Find a good swing coach, find a consistent and reliable swing coach. I know when I made that jump from middle school to high school, I got taller, I got lanky, and I got very clumsy. And it was very good to have a reliable swing coach who had been with me through when I was really tiny and when I got taller, because he was able to make those corrections with ease. And just remember to have fun. You're at this age where you should be having fun, exploring new sports, being out there with friends, and just enjoying the game for what it is. As freshmen and sophomores start learning about the recruiting process, it can be complex and it can come at you quite fast. Research schools and identify potential fits not only academically, but athletically. And then at the end, start sending emails, communicate, communicate, communicate. That June 15th will fastly approach, and that's when D1 and D2 coaches can reply to your emails. That doesn't mean you can't send emails ahead of time to get your name out there and get people talking about you, but that's something you need to preemptively prepare for. Juniors, a little bit behind here, but start making emails, 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 and emails. Consistent communication with coaches through emails, and make it personalized. Showcase achievements, provide updates about your performance, and send what you are working on.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Amberlyn. And Amberlyn, you touched on it, but it's always a challenge when we have people that are middle school, early in high school, late in high school. But these really are keys that will help everybody through the process. Middle school, these three things, freshman, sophomore, those three things. And as Amberlyn said, if you're a junior, start sending emails if you haven't already. So I'd love to turn it over to Caden for a couple minutes here to share his firsthand experience about the recruiting process. So real quick, Caden's from San Diego. Again, he committed to UPenn in July, SoCal Junior Am winner. So Caden, why don't you start by sharing a little bit about your recruiting journey?
Yeah, of course. So I think I started reaching out to coaches. I started sending them emails like December of my sophomore year. Uh, Not many responded, and then once June 15th hit, went on call, like had calls, went on visits, stuff like that, and then it took about a year until I got an offer in July. Um, Throughout the process, I was kind of looking for a more academic school while being able to play D1 golf, and I'm really thankful I was able to have that opportunity. And I guess some tips that I have are to stay consistent, keep contacting coaches even if they don't reply. Coaches are busy, coaches have a lot going on. Sometimes they don't always see your email or your text. Just, stay consistent. I found that to be the best possible tip or like strategy. Second one is be patient and take it one step at a time. There's really not much you can do to rush the process. Like do what you can, do what you need to do. But then everything else, it's in the coaches, like the ball's in the coaches' court. And so just focus on practicing, focus on, how do you make yourself better? How do you get better? Play better in that tournament you have coming up or something like that. And I think being patient and being able to take it one step at a time really kept me going throughout the process. And then lastly, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Like don't overthink things too much and just, if things aren't going well, just keep at it. Things are always going to work out. And that's what I had to say.
Yeah, that's great, Caden. Thank you so much. And I just want to take this opportunity to remind you all, please ask questions, right? This is great because it's a live Zoom session. We've got somebody here in Caden who went through the process, committed to an Ivy League school. We have about 70 people in this room right now. I guarantee there are some of you that want to go play Ivy League golf. Here's somebody who's committed to doing so. So please ask him questions, utilize that chat function now, or any other questions you have about the college golf recruiting process. We'll take a few of those questions before we turn it over to William to discuss Toyota Tour Cup qualification. Caden, while people are writing that in the chat, I have a question for you. How often were you sending emails to coaches?
I'd say every 2 to 3 weeks. That was generally like the time it took me. That was generally how often I was sending them updates. When there wasn't much going on, I would just be like, "Hey, I'm working on A, B, and C in my practice," or "Hey, I just wanted to, let you know how school is going," or something like that. But just being able to consistently, say hi or pop up in their inbox, I think it was something helpful, something that I did.
Absolutely. Okay, so a couple questions from people here, Caden. So with Ivy, excuse me, I'll go back to the top here. What kind of SAT scores do you need for an Ivy League school?
So in my experience, I say that I think that having above a 1500 is very like being having an SAT above a 1500 is like very good. Of course, like it's not necessarily a hard like number or anything like that. I know people who've had 1450s that have gotten it, or like lower scores or higher scores. But I think generally, if you get above a 1500, you're going to be pretty set. You're going to be pretty prepared. So I think that's, yeah.
Great. With Ivy League, was the offer delayed until after your junior year?
For me, it was. I was offered July after my junior year. However, I know that like for my class, Columbia, they offered during like in the middle of junior year, or Yale, they offered both spots in the middle of their junior year. And so I'd say that for the most part, yes, it is after your junior year. They like to see your junior year grades. They like to see how you like turned out your junior year. And then they like to take a little bit of time over the summer to watch you play as well. Um, so I'd say for the most part, yes, but in some situations, in some cases, they may offer earlier, but that's pretty rare to see.
Hmm. What do you think are the most important tournaments to play? Which ones do the coaches care about the most, Caden?
I'd say AJGA tournaments are great. I think coaches always like to look at those results. I also think, bigger like regional tournaments like TTCs, they're always helpful. I think I've heard a lot of coaches say that they want to see, yourself, they want to see their players push themselves to play at the highest level that they possibly can. So whether this means, like playing in a big regional tournament or trying to go for some national level tournaments, I think being able like just constantly trying to play like bigger and bigger tournaments against stronger and stronger fields, I think that's what coaches want to see. And so that includes AJGAs, that includes CTCs, that includes USGA events, any of those.
We got a lot of questions coming in, Caden. I knew you'd be very popular here, so we'll keep this going here. How did you structure your emails to the coaches?
Oh, I might have to take a look at some of the old emails. I think generally the subject line, that's really important. I do think having a subject line that's like that, you know, puts everything like puts your name, puts your year, puts that stuff out there. I think it's important. It's rather than something basic. So for example, what I had was like Caden Wang 2025, and then I was I was top 100 in Rolex and JGS at that time for my class. So I put that there, something that pops out, so that the coach when they see it in their inbox, they're like, oh, I want to take a look at this email. So subject line, I think that's really important. And then once I got into the email, I think um, generally speaking, in my update emails, I was like, hey, coach, blah, blah, blah. Just wanted to give you an update. If it was a tournament result, then I'd be like, I shot blah, 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 and then placed this out of how many players. And then I'm a pretty big stats guy, so I like to put some stats in there. And then if it's just about school, I'd be like, hey, just wanted to say like, school's going well. I just had, I have a couple tests coming up or something like that. Just that was generally how I structured it. It's just kind of like a text or something you could send to a friend or a parent, something pretty casual, I'd say.
How many hours do you practice in a day? And how did you balance your schoolwork with golf training?
Oh, so the school that I go to, it's interesting, and I don't think it would be the case for most people because I live about 50 minutes away. I practice about 50 minutes away from where I go to school. So I get out of school around 3:20 and then I get to the golf course at 4:10. So then because of that, depending on what time of the year it is, it could vary wildly. Like right now I have at most an hour in the afternoon to practice with daylight, of course. And then when it's, during the spring or during the fall, then times vary 2, 3 hours. So I'd say that during the weekdays, I personally didn't really get a lot of time as some other people might have. But I try to, offset that deficit by practicing a lot more on weekends and then trying to be a lot more effective with using my time. And then in terms of balancing my schoolwork, it definitely took some getting used to. My freshman year and sophomore year were tough. Uh, but I think what's really important is being able to know what's important in your schedule, what you need to do. Like I have that quiz coming up in 2 or 3 days. Do I start studying the night before? Or do I start studying now? And just knowing how to balance those things and being able to like do things ahead of time, I think it's helped with a lot of the stress because I won't have to be thinking about that in practice. And so I practice better. And then when the test like is drawing closer, like I know that I understand this material, and I know that I have this stuff done. And so being able to sort of prioritize and manage your time that way, I think that is by far the best way to balance schoolwork and golf.
Mhm. Um, did you also look at non-Ivy schools, programs with traditionally stronger golf programs, but less prestigious as far as academics? OSU, Vanderbilt, etc.
I did, yeah. So I emailed UC schools. I emailed some other uh, some other like fairly academically strong schools. I was generally looking for schools with like stronger academics. But you know, I did email um, other schools with stronger golf programs.
Great.
Most of them didn't respond because, well, I don't know, but I think in terms of what I was looking for, it worked out.
Can I just make a note on that, Caden, real quick? So as Caden mentioned, he's very humble. He didn't start with this, but he's been top 100 in the class for years now. Amazing student. And he just said there are multiple programs he emailed that he never got a response back from. Didn't happen. And so when you all are emailing, don't be discouraged. All right. There are schools you'll never get a reply from. Okay. How much time did you spend practicing on course versus hitting balls in the simulator and analyzing swing videos?
Um, hmm. I'd say I try to get out on the course 2 to 3 times a week, like during the like on weekdays. Weekends was like is like guaranteed, so probably 3 or 4 times a week. And in terms of hitting balls in a simulator, I generally since I'm from San Diego, um, I have the luxury of being able to practice outside. So I guess in like if you mean on the range, I'd say I spend maybe if I'm just practicing and I'm not going out onto the course, maybe 40% range, 60% short game and putting and everything else. And when I'm on the range, I spend maybe 25 to 50% of the time, depending on what I'm working on, like analyzing my technique, so taking swing bids and everything. Then the other 50% is just like hitting different shots. Like, can I hit a cut? Can I hit a draw? Can I hit a low shot, a high shot? Something like that. So being able to focus on performance rather than technique. Yeah.
Great. We'll take just a couple more questions for Caden here, and then we'll move on. I'm trying to find questions that are very specific to his uh, journey. Planning to relocate to San Diego with my junior golfer. What do you think would be a good golf course to move next to?
Oh, there's so many good golf courses here. I feel like there's some great junior golf at a place called the Grand. It's called the Grand Del Mar. I have so many friends that are from there. Like there's some absolutely amazing golfers, like Jay Lang Jr. He was and is a member there. And there's just so many good golfers from there. And I think uh like going there, I always feel like, you know, it's a great opportunity to improve. And they have great practice facilities as well. It's just a little bit on like the pricier end. Um, Personally, for me, I go to a place called Fairbanks, and I think it's a good golf course too. There's a ton of juniors there as well, and some pretty solid facilities. Um, I know a lot of people also. Actually, never mind. I think I would say those two off the top of my head. If I think of anything else, I'll let Joe know. But those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head.
Great. Okay. Well, Caden, thank you so much. I mean, your firsthand expertise and knowledge in this process is really invaluable, I think, to the younger students that are on this Zoom. Personally, I'm so proud of what you were able to accomplish academically, athletically, and we're really excited for you to represent Southern California at the next level at the University of Pennsylvania. So thank you so much for sharing a little bit more about yourself and answering these questions. We really appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Okay, so we'll move on here. Before Amberlyn picks back up with the recruiting journey, just one sort of programming note. We're going to talk about recruiting just for one more slide here, and then we're going to move on to the Toyota Tour Cup explanation. You can keep asking recruiting questions in the chat. And we'll circle back to those after William has gotten through the Toyota Tour Cup. So again, keep asking questions in the chat. That's great. We'll answer those later. So Amberlyn, why don't you tie things off here on the recruiting front?
Yeah, absolutely. So these keys will help you go to success on your golfing journey. And I think the number one to start with is kind of changing the mindset. You are recruiting the coaches are not recruiting you. And what I mean by this is you can't be passive. If you're being passive and not reaching out to coaches or making that effort to find the fit for you or find universities that you would like to attend, then you are going to be watching other people pass you by because they are making that effort. So take ownership of this journey and don't wait to be discovered. Number two, be open-minded. Consider the variety of universities and schools and programs, not just D1 or D2. There's D3 and AIA, all sorts of programs that you may not think at first look you would be a good fit for, but in reality, you might be. And of course, work hard. Work hard in school, work hard in golf, work hard on the recruiting efforts. But of course, balance all these efforts. Like Hayden said, he balanced school, he worked hard, and he made sure to prioritize and organize to stay ahead of things. Better grades will open up more doors to more programs, and it could also open doors to more grants and scholarship opportunities as well. Stay disciplined and set goals and manage your time effectively. And lastly, college golf is possible. I think of this as my own journey. I didn't start golfing until I was 15. Before that, I was a three-sport athlete. So I really didn't have my eyes set to play at college golf initially. I really didn't even start that process until I was a senior. And I was able to go play college golf at the University of Redlands, which is a D3 program. I was a SCPGA Junior Tour athlete myself, and I think if William went ahead and looked back at my stats, he would say I probably ended my high school senior year shooting in the average 80s. So I think I'm a good example that there is a fit for everyone, and it's about what you put into it. Of course, I lowered my scores from the mid 80s, and we went to D3 nationals for several years when I went to University of Redlands. So college golf is possible whenever you start that process and at whatever level you are at currently.
Wonderful. Okay, keep the questions coming. Like I said, we'll address those after the Toyota Tour Cup portion here. But William, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Joe, and it's great to see everyone joining this call. Just want to first thank you and Amberlyn for both taking your time to explain the college recruiting and essentially putting this together so that we can also explain how Toyota Tour Cup exemptions have changed for 2025. To jump right in, I'm sure everyone on this call already knows, but the Toyota Tour Cup is considered the premier level of the SCPGA Junior Tour, the highest level that we offer, with the other two being the Players Tour and the JDT. Membership to the Toyota Tour Cup is by invitation only and can be earned through several qualifying avenues, which we'll discuss in the next few slides, but the five being qualifying school, the Players Tour 2-day series, Players Tour Series Championship, local qualifiers, and most importantly, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead here, but to put it simply, the Toyota Tour Cup offers multi-day events throughout the year. Most of them are 36 holes, with a few of them being 54. All events are nationally ranked by JGS and recognized by AJ performance-based entry stars. So, these stars are really important to earn in order to give you playing opportunities on the AGA. But with that being said, Toyota Tour Cup is still a great avenue, besides AGA, to get recognition from college coaches, as with all multi-day events. With our major events like the Cantley finale that we just had, we had a lot of college coaches come out and recruit. Even with our Toyota Tour Cup Toyota Tour Cup Championship at the end of the year in December, we always have college coaches there. All of our events are also shared with our college database that includes all of emails from all colleges throughout the nation. So with that being said, Toyota Tour Cup is definitely one of the best local tours that we can offer, and it's something that I'm sure everyone here is trying to get into. Moving along here to the next slide, before I do explain the 5 qualifying avenues, I just want to put it out there that for 2025, we did make a few changes. To put it simply, 3 exemption criteria have remained the same, with 2 taking a big hit in terms of the change. But with the explanation that I'm about to give, it'll be listed out in terms of difficulty of how to earn an exemption, right? So the first one being qualifying school that we host annually in June and December. this 36-hole qualifying event, it's I would argue one of the easiest way to earn exemption, just because you're only required to play well in this event, just for 2 days to earn exemption. Typically speaking, the top 10% of the final field size will earn an exemption to the Tour de Tour Cup. So, for example, if the final field size is 240 players, the top 24 and ties will earn an exemption. Again, I consider this one of the easiest ways, just because, being a multi-day event, if you're a good enough player, having good 2 rounds, typically will give you an exemption. I like to, say that if you shoot anywhere from even to a few under, you're pretty much guaranteed a spot or an exemption earned through this method. Now, moving on to the next slide here, we still offer local qualifiers throughout the year. So for the SCPGA Tour, we host 15. New for 2025, we've actually expanded the field sizes to essentially give more opportunities for each gender. So we used to have 15 local qualifiers. Now we have 30, 15 for boys, 15 for girls. If you look at our schedule, they're typically listed out with the TTC event it's attached to. So it might say something like Tour de Tour Cup at Athlos Links qualifier at the golf course it's hosted at. I would consider this, just as easy, not necessarily easy, but it's considered one of the easier ways to earn exemption to the Tour de Tour Cup, just because it requires you to play well in 2 events, one being the qualifier and 2 being the event you qualified for. That might sound confusing, but to put it simply, if I can explain here, let's say you play in a local qualifier, you place within the top 6 for girls. I'm sorry, the top 6 for boys. I'm sorry. Let's say you play in a qualifier, you place within the top 3 for boys, you earn exemption to the Tour de Tour Cup event. In that specific Tour de Tour Cup event, if you place within the top 10, you earn exemption for the remainder of the season, including the next season. So essentially 2 seasons here, right? So again, going back here, I would consider this one of the easiest ways to earn exemption, just because it requires you to play well for 2 seasons. Just keep in mind that with local qualifiers, they tend to fill quite quickly when it comes to registration. So if you're not fast enough when you register, rest assured there's another one in the next few weeks that you can register for. And on top of that, for these events, we do have priority registration in place, so that if you don't get into one specific qualifier, you will be given priority for the next one. Now, moving on to the third way of earning exemption, which would be the Players Tour Series Championship. New for 2025, we have actually eliminated exemptions earned through the season-long points race. Even though we are eliminating points race for that season, you'll actually still earn points at every Players Tour event, including local qualifiers. Now you might ask, why are we earning points for? The points are for this event, which is the Series Championship, right? These points earned will give you a spot for that specific season. For each season, the top 27 boys in each age division, which is the 12 to 14 and 15 to 18, and the top 18 girls in each age division, again, the 12 to 14 and 15 to 18, will earn a spot into this event. From this event, the top 4 girls and the top 6 overall boys plus ties will earn exemption for the TTC. Now, this has changed from last year, just because we actually offered less exemptions earned through this event, but because we have eliminated the season-long points race exemption, we've actually increased the number of players that we are awarding exemptions to in this event. I personally would consider this one of the more difficult ways of earning exemption, just because you have to accumulate enough points to play in this event, and on top of that, you have to additionally play well in this 2-day event. I also like to, tell everyone that, consider this a mini Q school, right? It's still a multi-day event, but you have to qualify for this Q school, if that makes sense. Now, with the next 2 exemptions, these are actually new for 2025. For the Players Tour 2-day series, we actually host these events throughout the year. Specifically, we have 14 of these events that we host, 5 in the spring, 4 in the summer, 5 in the fall. New for 2025, winning a Players Tour 2-day event will earn an exemption to the Tour de Tour Cup. The exemption criteria will essentially, you'll earn exemption for the remainder of the season and including the next season. So for example, if you win a 2-day championship in the fall, or in this case, in the spring, you'll earn exemption for the summer and the fall for the same year. So I would actually also, say that this is one of the more difficult ways of earning exemptions, just because with any multi-day event, winning it's already a big feat, right? It requires you to play really, really well for 2 days. Kind of like Q school where you have to play well for 2 days, but as long as you place in the top 10, you earn exemption. For this, you have to win, right? It's typically difficult with scores being either close to even or even a few under on the Players Tour, right? So it just requires you to be at the best of your game for that weekend or weekdays when we have events in the summer. Now, the last way to earn exemption would be through the Players Tour overall points race. Now, you might ask yourself, I just mentioned we did eliminate season-long points race exemptions earned, but new for 2025, we are awarding exemptions for the overall points race. So, like I mentioned with the Series Championship, you still earn points through every Players Tour events you play in, right? Whether it be a single day, multi-day, or a TTC qualifier. All of these points will be, all the points you earn through these events will be added up towards this points race. Just keep in mind that the points earned will be awarded based off the field size and your finish in that specific event. With that being said, the top 3 overall boys and top 3 overall girls will earn exemption for this method. I would seriously consider that this method would be considered the hardest, just because it requires a year-long commitment in playing events, right? To put it simply, if you do miss a weekend, right, that might be the difference of you placing in the top 3 of that specific points race, right? It's one of the hardest, just because I've seen many players miss out, even like with 1 point, right? It's very difficult. I don't want to discourage you, but it's still definitely a good method to get in. But just keep in mind that with the way we have listed out the exemption criteria, this one is being difficult, with the easiest, I'd argue, being Q school and the local qualifiers. I know a lot of this information, it's a lot that I just shared, but as a resource, right, I'm always available to talk to in regards to exemption criteria. You're more than welcome to give us a call, shoot us an email, right? We know it's difficult to earn exemption. We're always here to help and explain and walk you through the process if you have any questions.
Wonderful. Speaking of questions, this is a great time to ask them. Like I said, I do want to start with the Toyota Tour Cup questions for William, just so he can jet if he needs to. Something as you all are formulating questions for William that you can write in the chat. Something that I was struck by, William, hearing all those qualifying methods kind of stacked back to back, is playing Players Tour and playing well in Players Tour, of course, really can unlock some possibilities at the Toyota Tour Cup level. I mean, there's students of ours that we talk to who say, hey, I want to play Toyota Tour Cup, and they've never gone for Players Tour events before. So it seems to me, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but so multiple of these methods here come from playing well in the Players Tour series. Is that correct?
That's very much correct. Yes. I mean, with all the methods I mentioned, you have to essentially play well for whether it be a year long, 2 events, 1 event. It just requires you to be at the top of your game for that, that time period.
I have a question, Joe.
Please.
Since I used to be so close to these rules when I was SCPGA Junior Tour staff member, since it wasn't on that screen, can you go over what you have to place in at that specific Toyota Tour Cup event to retain your membership once you got in from a local qualifier? I don't believe that number was on there for boys or girls.
Yes, absolutely. So again, this what I'm about to share might seem like a lot. So if you have questions about it, all this information is on our website. But to just jump right in, for local qualifier, right, the top 5 boy and the top 3 girls will earn exemption to the specific Tour Cup event. From there, the boy will have to either place in the top 10, and the girls will have to place in the top 6 to earn exemption for the remainder of the current year. I'm sorry, for the remainder of the season, including the following season. So, I'm sorry. See, I'm still confused about this information just because I have all my notes right here, but I'm gonna backtrack here. For the qualifying criteria, right, if once you're in the TTC event, if you place within the top 15 for boys or the top 10 for girls, you earn exemption for the remainder of the season, including the following season. But on the flip side, if you place in the top 10 for boys or the top 6 for girls, you'll actually earn an exemption for the remainder of the current year and the next year. So essentially, the better you play in this TTC event, the longer your exemption, right? So again, just going back here, for boys, you need to place within the top 15 or the top 10. For girls, it's either the top 10 or the top 6, right? Depending on where you place within that range will determine the length of membership.
Thank you, William. And for any of these, if someone qualifies and they already have a Toy Tour Cup exemption, do you skip to the next person, or is that spot forfeited?
It's unfortunately forfeited. With how the drop downs work in terms of exemptions. I would say the best way to look at it would be through our website, or through our handbook. But if you already have a TTC exemption in order to expand on it, right, you do need to place within the top 10 for boys or top 6 for girls. But with that being said, I didn't mention this earlier, but for a TTC extended field, which is a TTC event that has just essentially a bigger field size, if you qualify for one of those, the exemption criteria will actually expand to top 15 and top 10 to essentially extend their membership.
Thank you, William.
William, there's a question for you in the chat. I'll let you read and interpret that if you have access to that.
Yeah, so the question is, if you qualify but don't make it to the TTC qualify this season, do you get any advantages if you get kicked out? I'm sorry if I am interpreting this question incorrectly, but I believe you're asking if you don't retain your membership, do you have any advantages once you're not a TTC member? To answer it, quite frankly, I would say no. I mean, you do have the advantage of having experience of playing TTC events. I will say that what I've seen so far is once a player tour member earns his exemption to the TTC, they more often than not, they do improve quite drastically, right? I've seen players where they average high 70s, so now they're shooting low 70s within a year. And even then, once they move back down, what I typically see is that they'll play in Q school, then they'll earn their exemption right back. But just, it's still quite difficult to get in, but it's just, to answer your question, I would say no, they don't get an advantage, but they do get the experience of being a TTC member for a year. And on top of that, they typically do come out a better player. So the next question, yeah, go ahead.
No, please go ahead, William.
Yeah. The next question is, how long is the exemption for girls who place top 6? So for girls who place top 6, if we're speaking in terms of through a qualifier, the exemption will last the current year, expanding to the next year. So an example right now that I'll give is, let's say your child plays in a TTC event this year, right? We'll say next weekend, they place 5th in that event. They'll have an exemption through the remainder of this year, 2025, spilling over to 2026. So essentially, they'll have an exemption until December of 2026. Hope that answered your question. Next question here is, if someone wins a regular 2-day, like the Jack Kramer, you're an exemption this year. So yes, if for any 2-day event this year and onward, so for 2025 and onwards, if you win, you earn exemption for the current season and the following season. So with every 2-day event, the specific season it's in will be listed in its title. So our upcoming one is titled the 2-day series spring series number 1 at Morongo. I believe it's being played the first weekend of February. If you win that 2-day event, you'll earn an exemption for the remainder of the spring season, which ends in May. And it carries over to the summer season, which ends in August. Right? Another example is if you earn exemption in fall of this year, right? Let's say you earn in October of 2025, you'll have an exemption through the end of 2025, spilling over to spring 2026. I hope that answered your question, Chris. So for Howard Leung, he's asking, what is the benefit of focusing on Tour de Tour versus AGA if one only has time for D1, D2, and D3? This might be a better question answered through Joe and Amber Lynn here, but to give you my input, Howard, personally, I actually never played on the Tour Cup. I mean, I played in one event back when I was the SCPGA Junior Tour member. Similar to Amber Lynn's story, I struggled a lot when I was a junior. I developed late, essentially, as a junior tour player. I never played a Tour Cup event, or I was never a Tour Cup member, but I did end up receiving a scholarship to play Division II golf at Cal State Dominguez Hills. I never played an AJ event just because of the funds that were lacking, for lack of better terms. But to answer your question, right, the end goal would be to play in as much AJGA events as you can. With how difficult it is, earning stars to play in those. A local tour like the Tour Cup would be a very good way to earn I would say recognition through college coaches. But most importantly, right, I would just say generally speaking, playing in as much multi-day events is really crucial for college recruitment. A lot of college coaches will look at multi-day events just because they want to see what your child can do through those 2 days, right? And on top of that, multi-day events are submitted to JGS for rankings, which college coaches use when it comes to recruiting players, if I'm not mistaken here. I know it's a lot that I just gave, but I'm not sure if Joe and Amber Lynn have more to add to that.
Yeah, I think William, you spoke about it pretty well. I know a lot of people who never played AJGA. I knew one that actually got recruited to play at ASU, and they only played Toyota Tour Cup events. I've spoken to golf coaches who believe that Toyota Tour Cup is a pretty premier tournament league, and that's usually what they look at to kind of gauge a player's performance. That doesn't mean you shouldn't play an AJGA. I think there's value to both. If you have the means and the ways to play an AJGA, I would certainly recommend it. It's definitely a different competition and you're exploring outside of the Southern California area. Joe, any other insight?
No, I think that's great. You all handled it. And then we'll let William, maybe this be the last question for you here, just because we do know that it's a school night. So we want to keep things moving here. But we have one last question in the chat for you.
Yeah, so Kelly's asking, do players tour points and/or Tour de Tour events have any influence or relationship to AJ qualifying? I would say yes, in terms of the second point that you're asking there. But to answer your question, for points, it doesn't have an influence or relationship to AJ qualifying. But for Tour de Tour Cup events and Players Tour 2-day events, it does because we award stars based off your standing. So for Players Tour 2-day events, typically it's the champion and the top 10% that will earn a number of stars. For Tour de Tour Cup, it's more. But with these stars, right, these are the ones that you'll need to play to get into AGA events, right? For more information regarding AGA performance-based entry, which is, it's great that it's on this slide, right? Essentially, it's PVE stars. I would actually recommend that you reach out to either Joe or Amber Lynn, just because they'll have the means to really explain more about what it takes to earn stars. But if anything, I would also just recommend that you reach out to AGA or even go to their website to read more about what it takes to earn stars and what other events do offer these stars.
Wonderful. William, thank you so much for the insight. I mean, it's a wonderful goal to play Toyota Tour Cup, but there's obviously a lot that goes into that. Unfortunately, you all have William at the SCPGA Junior Tour to rely on for this great information. So thank you so much, William, for co-hosting this with us and sharing this fantastic information. We really appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you and Evelyn for having me on this call here. And like I mentioned to everyone, if anyone does have questions regarding Tour de Tour Cup exemptions, you're more than welcome to give us a call or to shoot us an email. Be more than happy to assist you in anything you have.
Great. Okay, so we'll jump to some more college golf recruiting questions here. And Amber Lynn, some of these questions were sent to me via direct message, so I'll just read these out loud. What's the difference between D1 and D2 in terms of amount of practice, commitment, and scores?
I think there's quite a bit of differences, especially with practice and time commitment. When I played D3, I actually played intramural sports. I was in a sorority. I was able to take time off, and I know other teammates of mine were able to go and travel abroad for a semester. So there is more leeway when you play D3 if you have other interests versus D1 and D2, where you will be doing morning workouts or afternoon workouts, practicing with a team very often and having harder time commitments in terms of the team. For looking at scores, I would just recommend going and looking at D1, D2, and D3 national championships and looking at the scores that were posted. You'll see such a wide range of scores. I was just looking at the D3 national championships finals, and the first place team had scores in the low 70s, a few under par, and the last place team had scores that were in the mid 80s to even low 90s. So there's definitely an array of scores in the D1, D2, D3 programs.
Can you give us your thoughts on the 2025 recruiting class, so current senior recruiting class here, with the new roster caps coming into place?
I'll let you take that one, Joe.
Okay. It's interesting, Steven. The question from Steven is because if anybody tells you they know the answer, they don't. Because this roster cap that's been talked about, but is not a hard and fast rule yet, basically says that as a result of legislation and litigation, the NCAA may institute a hard roster cap on college teams. Now, is that going to be all of Division One? Is it going to be just the power conferences? Sounds like some conferences are going to do this, some conferences are going to do that. Maybe 9 for men's teams, 8 for women's teams, maybe 9 for women's teams. There's a lot that's thrown out there. There's nothing that's official yet. Some coaches are operating as if this is going to happen for sure, and they are purposely recruiting fewer players as a result. Whereas some men's teams used to be 14 players sometimes at the D1 level. Women's teams sometimes used to be 12 or 13. That may go the way of the dodo. That may not be happening anymore. What I tell you is the process itself doesn't change. The way you go through the recruiting process that Caden helped to detail is not going to be changed at all. The only change, assuming this does happen in some form, is that the process is going to be more competitive. So it becomes even more important that you all are doing things the right way through the recruiting process. I'll grab this next one as well. What is the easiest way to get into AJGA events? William mentioned that, but it's pretty well detailed on their site. Much like the SCPGA, you can call them and they'll pick up and talk to you, which is pretty awesome, honestly. AJGA, depending on what age you are, offers different ways to get into their tournaments, whether it's preview events that's specifically designed for people who have not played AJGAs before, or for younger players, the Junior All-Star Series. So there are some paths to getting in. But I'll be honest, you guys are in California, Southern California. This might be the best area to be a junior golfer. So take advantage of the SCPGA Junior Tour and all it has to offer and all the other tournaments down here. Focus on that, because if you're chasing your tail trying to get to AJGAs before maybe you're ready, you're not helping yourself as a golfer. But certainly you can explore that process. Amberlynn, do coaches only select people based off scores, or is it based off the potential to grow?
I think my personal journey really highlights that. Like I mentioned, I was averaging in the mid 80s when I was a senior in high school, but I communicated to college coaches I had only been golfing for 2 years. And seeing that progression, they knew there was some keen interest that I can grind hard and get my scores down. And that, I was a long hitter too. So you want to make sure you're honing in on those key aspects when you're talking to golf coaches to make you stand out.
Mackenzie asked a great question about D1, D2, D3, but Amberlynn, I feel like you covered that pretty well in a previous response. Here's another question. Realistically, how good does one's golf game need to be? For instance, class ranks, scoring average, podium finishes, scoring differentials to be recruited into a top D1 program, say top 20 to 30 in the country, with reduced rosters, transfer portal, JUCO still retaining all 4 years of eligibility, and now NCAA giving a 5th year. Seems like supply will be much greater than demand, and it will be even more of a challenge for a 17-year-old, possibly 16 if wanting to early commit, to be able to compete for a spot versus 20 or even 23-year-old grown adults. So, Amberlynn, how good do you need to be to play college golf?
Again, look at those team scores. That will give you a really good indication. It's gonna depend. You'll look at the top 3 players they're playing. They're usually going to be quite under par if you're looking at D1. Look at the bottom the 3 worst performing on that team. I think that would give you a good indication of your benchmark of where you should be in trying to get recruited for that college.
Great. Let's see what else has come in here. UCSB and UCSD don't have a women's golf team. Has there been any discussion on starting a ladies program there? William or Amberlynn, do you guys have any inside intel on this?
I wish. I can tell you from my own personal experience, there was a rumor that Cal State San Bernardino was going to have a new women's golf team when I was going through that college process, and 13 years later, they still do not have a women's team. So I don't know how to maybe gauge that, unfortunately.
If you get recruited, does it basically mean you get accepted to that school?
No, you need to go through the admissions process. So having your grades in check are going to be very important going through that recruiting process. I've known individuals who got recruited to play at really great D3 schools, but unfortunately, their admissions did not pass the test.
Yeah, that's a great point. Keep the questions coming. We've got a couple being sent by a lot being sent by a couple people. That's great. We'll answer all those. But anybody else that's got questions, please weigh in here. Um, what do you think most college coaches prioritize as far as rankings? AJGA versus JGS versus WAGR. Any weight being placed on new ranking lists like TUGR?
Man, I love your insight too on this, Joe. I think it's very subjective. I think AJGS is the more common ranking to utilize. Wagger, not so much. I really don't see many utilizing the Wagger system. But again, it's really about communicating your scores and the tournaments you're playing in, not so much, the specific ranking system you are utilizing.
Yeah, completely agree. What's the scholarship difference money-wise between D1, D2, D3?
That's really going to be, it's going to depend. It's not a one size fits all approach. You can provide, coaches can provide a full ride, which isn't always a possibility. It's actually rarely probably the case doing a full ride scholarship, or they might disperse it across different individuals. They have a maximum scholarship they can utilize, but it's not a binary approach. Any other thoughts, Joe, on that one?
No, that's perfect. I would completely agree. D3 cannot give athletic scholarships in any form or fashion, but they can, as an institution, give you academic scholarships. D1 does have more scholarships that they can give. That doesn't mean that they have to give those. So you may get a bigger scholarship actually to D2 than a D1, depending on the situation. But for the most part, D1 is going to give the most money, D2 the second most, D3 the least. But that depends on a variety of factors as well, like Amberlyn said. Um, how come the number of females on the team are less than that of the men's golf team? Any thoughts?
I have not seen that personally. Have you, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the institution, right? But in general, yeah, I do think that the women's teams are a little bit smaller. It's a great question. I do think that you do have, you guys are more of an expert than I am on this, Amberlyn and William, but fewer girls competing at the junior level. But the great thing about college golf, from a girls' perspective, is that the number of teams, and to your point, Amberlyn, the number of players is pretty close. And so what happens is, I'll tell you that the girls actually have an advantage when they go through this process because there's more spots in college relative to the number of junior players if you're a girls player versus a boys player. So yeah, if it's competitive no matter what, boys versus girls, but I think the girls do have a little bit of an advantage. There's nothing wrong with that in this process. Amberlyn, are there any benefits or visibility to high school golf teams? Or if college golf is a desire, just focus on local and national tours?
This question comes up a lot. It did, especially when I worked at SCPGA. And William, I'd love your insight on this because I know we we get it all the time too. But I think there's a huge benefit of high school golf because not only are you getting and playing in that team environment, you're showcasing to the college coaches that you know how to play in a team environment. And that is very different than just specifically playing on a local tour or practicing alone. It's very, very different, the team dynamic. So I would say college coaches hold that in really high regard.
I would definitely agree with that. I would definitely recommend high school golf as being a viable option in terms of competitiveness. To add on to that, playing in a CIF event is also a good way to get recognized. I know a lot of golf coaches recruit through CIF as well.
Couple interesting questions here in the chat. I thought Title IX normalized and made funding fair regardless of gender. What we're talking about is golf specific here. Title IX refers more to the total number of dollars that athletic departments spend on the men's versus women's teams. Um, and then this is a direct message here. Um, Something about having a lot of credits coming into college. So if I got recruited, if I had a lot of credits, I would only be on the team for 2 years. Will I be considered a freshman or a junior on the golf team? And do coaches allow someone to be on the team for just 2 years? I'll take this just because I'm sort of reading all the details here. You actually still have 4 years of eligibility. So what I would do if I were you is I'd play undergrad golf, golf as an undergrad for 2 years, graduate as an undergrad. I still have 2 years of eligibility remaining, and then get my grad degree, right, at the University of Redlands or wherever you're going while you're still there playing on the team. So actually, you have the ability, if you come into college with a lot of credits, to double up, get multiple degrees while still just using your 4 years of eligibility. Um, Amberlynn, what if the player's high school doesn't have a golf team? What would be the path?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. There's a lot of players, especially in Southern California, that don't play in high school golf, and they still do just fine on that college pathway to golf. I would just keep doing what you're doing, grind hard on school and golf, and play in the local tours. You have so many tournaments here in your backyard. But if you're not at a school that does have a high school team, I wouldn't be too concerned of having to change your school or go seek out a program. Absolutely wouldn't go that far.
Right. So follow up to that. Should we be seeking out a high school that has a good golf program, Amberlynn?
Not necessarily. I played on a team that was all new the first time I joined it. We had players shooting in the 60s for 9 holes. I was so it really doesn't matter if you have a team that are all shooting 30 in the 30s and are stand out. It's the dynamic of playing on a team, and I can see the pros and cons for playing on a good team or a bad team. If you're playing on a team that maybe isn't the best, that camaraderie and maybe that guidance that you supply to your other teammates will come into value as you move on to college golf.
Do I understand correctly that a player can play at a JUCO now for 2 years without starting the NCAA eligibility ticker? I'll take this one. What this is referring to is a very recent case involving the Vanderbilt quarterback that involves name, image, likeness money that he could potentially make, and why JUCO is very different from a power conference Division I program for football. In other words, we're like 5 steps away from the college golf recruiting process here. And that's also not set in stone how it's going to apply to a regular college golfer. And I also just sort of want to redirect here for a bit. There's a lot of angst about NCAA changes, the roster limits, JUCO eligibility, even the transfer portal. What I think is important, whether it's golf or the recruiting process, is that you are focused on you. Because if you are doing things the right way, and Amberlynn said it earlier, if you're doing things the right way, there's going to be a college golf spot for you, right? I'll stop just short of a guarantee, but just short. I mean, there are over 1,000 men's and over 1,000 women's programs at the college level if you factor in D1, D2, D3, NAIA, JUCO. So there's probably a spot for you if you're improving on the course, doing well in the classroom, and working on the recruiting process. So I think the focus really needs to be a lot more myopic. Focus on getting those emails to college coaches, finding the right schools for you, going about this process the right way. Whatever external factors are influencing how challenging it's going to be, it is what it is, right? Just work on this process for you, and you're probably going to have a good result. These are excellent questions. Any more questions here? I know we've been talking for an hour, so we will wrap it up pretty soon, but do want to address any last questions that you all have. We'll hang out for a couple more minutes here. Thank you, David. A couple more minutes here if any other questions come in. Again, we'll just sort of wrap up here as I'm waiting, but William made a very nice offer. Hey, reach out to me at SCPGA Junior Tour if you have questions about Toyota Tour Cup. Amberlynn and I will echo the same sentiment. College golf recruiting is, we think, a great process, a fun process. It's also a complicated process. So if this is something you want to pursue, being recruited to play college golf, reach out to me directly. You all probably got my email response, but it's athlosjoe@gmail.com. If you want to learn about the recruiting process, again, we're an SCPGA Junior Tour partner, so happy to answer any questions that you have. If a player has a few universities in mind to attend, how do we reach out to find what the coaches are looking for, Amberlynn?
In regards to the type of player or the scores.
Yeah, great question. I mean, if you could follow up on that. So like when you say what coaches are looking for, do you mean like what your scoring average needs to be? What they're looking for in terms of intangibles. So we'll let Amanda sort of follow up on that while we answer the next question here from Laura. Do summer programs at colleges help with exposure? And we're talking about college golf camps, I think, here with this question, Amberlynn.
Yeah, I would say you need to have a goal in mind. The goal for these coaches attending these camps are not to recruit. That's not the time they do it. They're there to assist in those that are attending the camps, show them what college golf is like, provide tips, those types of things. So I would use it in a way to set up what goals you would like to attain out of it. Is it learning if college golf is right for your child? Is it, do you like this school, if it's the summer camps at a specific university you're interested in? I went to a summer camp at ASU and I learned I never wanted to stay in a dorm at ASU after that because they were gross. So I think you always learn something from these summer camps, and make sure you have a goal in mind. It's not going to be to get recruited from our summer camp. That's absolutely not going to be what's going to make the break the bank.
Yep. Yep. Okay, let's see if Amanda followed up on that. Yes, Amanda said what she's asking about what coaches are looking for, overall scores and categories that coaches are seeking in players to be on the team. What types of questions should we be asking so the player can work toward those goals?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say ask the coach, write the coach, hey, here's where I'm at right now. I'm working on this, this, and this. Can you give me insight on where I should be or what I should focus on? And they're going to be the best and honest answer when it comes to the universities you're looking at.
And keep in mind, Amberlin's absolutely right. But Caden said, "Hey, there's coaches he never got a response from. They don't owe you a response." So I'll go back to another piece of advice that Amberlin gave earlier. You can look up the scores for these teams. What you want to do is take your average score and compare it to the top 3 players on a team. Because college courses are longer, they play more days of golf. So compare your score to the top 3 players on the team. If you're averaging an 82 and the top 3 players are averaging a 72, we got some work to do, right? But if we're averaging a 75, the top 3 players are averaging a 75, okay, we're probably a good fit score-wise. That doesn't mean don't reach out if your scores, there's a big gap there. But if you're wondering what they're looking for, a lot of times you can find the stats online, or like Amberlin said, coaches are sometimes happy to answer that question directly. Let's see. What kind of videos, Amberlin, should we send to college coaches?
Ooh, I wish you had that slide that showed the demonstration on here. You definitely want to do a downline approach to show your swing and a front on swing video. Other video, Joe. I think it was
Yeah, let me pull up the page, Amberlin. Thank you for the prompt here. So this is our website, athloscollegecoaching.com/resources. This is on our Instagram page as well. But just some tips about how to create swing videos. We got basically your 2 main clubs, driver and a mid iron, one face on and down the line here. Okay, and this is how they should look. Boy, that doodle that somebody did on everything. But it's these 4 videos here, right? It's as simple as that. And what we recommend doing is putting it on your Instagram page. So you can send coaches your Instagram page link and they can easily go and see your swing videos. Let's see. I'll quickly take this one, Amberlin. Does Toyota Tour Cup give you a ranking for junior golf scoreboard? So William alluded to this, but you have to play 4 multi-day events in a 1-year span to have a ranking on junior golf scoreboard, whether that's Players Tour, Toyota Tour Cup, AJGA, FCG, whatever. You just need 4 multi-day events of any type, junior golf events of any type will give you a rank on junior golf scoreboard. Not the most important thing, but it is good to have a rank on junior golf scoreboard. Amberlin, question from Parker. When can you start talking to coaches and when can they respond?
You can start sending emails at any time, but they cannot respond for D1 and D2 until June 15th after your sophomore year. This does not include D3, so they can talk to you at any time.
Yeah, perfect. Do you recommend working with a recruiting company or can a player do the process on their own? Well, you're asking the wrong person on that. Listen, obviously there are people that have achieved the goal of playing college golf without the help of Athlos College Coaching or other recruiting companies. The philosophy that Amberlin and I have at Athlos is very simple. You have one shot to do this. If you wake up at age 19 as a sophomore in your dorm room in college, not playing golf, you cannot go back and go through the recruiting process in high school again. You got one shot to play college golf. So our whole approach is let's put everything into it. Let's give you everything we have as coaches. We expect you to do as much as possible as a player to go through this process. And that's going to give you the best possible result in what is now a very competitive recruiting environment. So yes, we do recommend recruiting companies, one specifically, us. But certainly if you want to tackle this on your own, you have the ability to do so.
If I can jump in here, Joe, I'm sorry for interrupting, but
Please.
to piggyback, I would definitely recommend using a recruiting company. Just because with the recruiting process, it's a daunting task if you're going into it blind. Having someone that's an expert in this is definitely a good tool to use. I mean, someone like Joe and Amberlyn here, they're definitely here. They're good resources, and they're definitely going to do their best to get your child recruited.
Yeah, thank you, William. We really appreciate that. And it's fun, right? I mean, I remember when Caden got the UPenn offer and we were debating between that and a couple other things. And, he and I were texting, probably exchanging 30 texts a day for about 2 weeks during the end of that process. And it's because ultimately he's making the decision, but Amberlyn and I are here to help you with that because, the result playing college golf like William and Amberlyn did, I mean, boy, it's pretty cool, right? It's pretty cool to play college golf and achieve that goal. Chris said most schools have a golf page and a tab that says stats, and you can download the PDF. Yep, absolutely right. Great tip for everybody. Thank you, Chris. Is it important, Amberlyn, for high school golfers to have social media like Instagram?
I don't think it's a absolute necessary entity to have, but it is a recommendation to at least have an Instagram page that maybe showcases your golf swing, maybe highlights some really great tournament results, and celebrates those wins. Of course, keeping it golf related and not melting that in with some personal items. But it'd be a great, easy way to send college coaches your swing and share your highlights.
Perfect. Can you comment on some of the recent big spends by schools on upgrading golf facilities? Seems like a huge commitment to a non-revenue sport would indicate prioritizing recruiting and building a strong program. Do they have a golf-obsessed, generous alumni? This is at programs like Vanderbilt and Alabama. I would just quickly say that, Vanderbilt and Alabama are doing things differently, right? Those SEC schools, some of the Big Ten schools, that looks a lot different. So yeah, it's great that schools are making a commitment to golf, but listen, at Redlands and Cal State Dominguez Hills and programs all over the country, the programs and schools and coaches care about winning. And so you're going to see as much commitment as schools and programs can possibly give all over the country. Uh, what's our mix of D1 versus D2 placed recruits? We have more D1 than D2 or D3, but we have plenty of D2 and D3. And we're equally as proud of D2, D3. One of my favorite students ever is at Cal Maritime here. Got the flag behind me. That is an NAIA program, a Merchant Marine Academy here in Vallejo, Northern California. I'm so happy that he found that school. I'm overjoyed. And it's not because he's at Alabama, right? It's because he found a program that's a great fit for him. And that's what Amberlyn and I are trying to do. At what grade should we start to engage with your company? You can reach out to us anytime. We can sort of assess when it makes sense to start. But I'll tell you, I'll go back to the tips that Amberlyn shared. Don't be pressured into this, right? If you're a middle schooler, notice we did not say you need to start recruiting, right? We're not here to pressure you, okay? Play regularly, have fun, get a good swing coach. Once you hit high school, then there's things that we can and would love to help you with. But really, probably the simplest answer is high school. Great. I'll take a couple more quick questions if there's anything else for Amberlyn or myself. Yeah, I'll let you take this one, Amberlyn. Could you describe the steps that Athlos will do to assist the players?
Yeah, it starts with having a college list based off an assessment with that player. A list, it could be up to as many as 35 different colleges. It's going to be based off of what the goals that player has. So a mix of D1, perhaps D2, D3, maybe some NAIA, but it's going to be based on that player. And of course, some safety schools as well. That list will have all the information, the coach, details about where that school is at, maybe even have some universities that you're not familiar with, which is always a good thing to throw in the mix. We will go through that list with you and the player and see what makes the most sense and have you start making those contacts and relations with the coaches or send email to the coaches. We'll go through that process, keep track of that process, help you personalize emails to the coaches, how to make that jump from doing emails to calls, hopefully from calls to visits, and hopefully visits to recruitment. That's the simplest answer I think I could probably give. Joe, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, no, that's it. Those are the steps, right? We're not here to overcomplicate it. Those are the entire steps of the recruiting process. Where we try to come in is that we're not just giving you the steps and saying good luck. We are working with you every single step of the way communicating with you in between the one-on-one Zooms we have to make sure that everything is being handled in the proper fashion. Again, we have one shot to do this, so we want to do it the right way. But that's how it works. We lead you through every process together, hand in hand, until hopefully you get an offer to a school that you're really excited about. Why is a swing coach specifically pointed out, Amberlyn, in middle school? Why is that something that we should start focusing on in middle school here?
I think you want to start having a good the fundamentals. You want to get those in place at a early age. Of course, if you didn't start in middle school and you started in high school like me, it doesn't matter when you get a good swing coach, but you should start setting those good thoughts into place and good habits into place. And again, having a consistent swing coach. I tried going to different ones and I always found my way back to my original swing coach because they knew my swing best and how to honestly deal with my brattiness as a child too, the best way possible. So, and I still talk to him to this day.
That's fantastic. Great. Okay, so whether it be advice on which tournaments to compete in, I'll just reiterate here again. Think about Amberlyn and I have talked to people that like live in Montana and states like that. We are spoiled here in California, so start local. Right, the SCPGA Junior Tour at every level is a great place to compete. If you're wondering what tournaments to play in, start here. Start what's available, the SCPGA Junior Tour. And if you want to supplement that, certainly there's other organizations that do host tournaments in Southern California that you can check out as well. But yeah, I think having an amazing local organization right here that represents some of the best in junior golf is quite a luxury. So we would start with the SCPGA Junior Tour. Okay. Well, hey, thank you all so much again. I know it's a school night, so it seems like we answered all the questions here. We're so appreciative of all of you joining. Again, if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to tackle any questions you have about the recruiting process. You can email us, athlosjoe@gmail.com. Amberlyn and I would be happy to speak with you about where you are in your golf journey. Again, we wish you all the best. I know it's been a very difficult last week and a half down in Southern California. We're thinking about you. We were so happy to connect with so many of you this evening. And again, don't be a stranger. Reach out to SCPGA Junior Tour with questions or us at Athlos College Coaching with questions. And we wish you all the best. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.